Can you start by telling us a little bit about what you feel the lessons of Ted Bundy are and what made Zach the perfect choice of actor to tell that story?
Right. Well, I think the lessons of Ted Bundy can't be overstated. He's a guy who people thought was a terrific, swell guy who, was not capable of these types of crimes. And in my 25 years of filming real crime, I'm mainly known for, crime documentaries. It's my experience that the people who do the worst in life are often the people you least expect and most often trust. And I thought that was an important message to put out there today for a younger generation who hasn't heard of Ted Bundy. He eluded capture for so long because he was able to deceive everyone around him. And for me, the movie is a portrait of that kind of deception and betrayal.
What's fascinating about this story that you're telling is that it's not just about Ted Bundy, but it's about the other side, the female side of that narrative. Can you talk a little bit about the qualities that Lily has that makes her such a special performer and why you wanted to focus on that aspect of the Bundy story?
Well, Lily Collins was my first choice to play Elizabeth Klopfer, and she did an amazing job. It's not an easy role, particularly the second half of the movie where she's kind of imprisoned in herself, trying to figure out what's going on, and she's kind of alone and isolated, and that's not easy to play. But I think it's important to tell the female side of the story, to the victim side of the story, because I want to arm a new generation with the knowledge that the people who do bad things in life are often the people you least expect. And Lily did a fantastic job doing that. Whether it's a priest who commits pedophilia and holds mass the next day or a Ted Bundy, we have to understand that just because people look and act a certain way doesn't make them a good person. The biggest challenge was convincing people that this was a good story to tell. We live in an age of Me Too accountability, which I wholeheartedly subscribe to. We live in an age where there's a lot of true crime, and why make another movie? And the answer to me is tell the story through the perspective of the female victim. Tell the story of how serial killers deceive and manipulate, and it'd be easy to make another film about how a serial killer kills, the escalating body count, the police procedural, and by the end of the movie they catch their man. But that's been done, and I think it's much more important to understand that serial killers are not two-dimensional monsters that only kill. They also have a whole other life, and they deceive people. Portraying that, to me, was, an interesting approach and a way to kind of turn the serial killer genre on its head. Now, some have said, who haven't seen the movie, some have said, oh, you're glorifying because you're not showing the violence. To me, that's crazy. Showing the violence, to me, is more disrespectful to the victims. If you've been the victim of a horrible murder and rape, I don't think the family members want to see that recreated on screen. We talk about violence, we don't avoid the violence, but we don't show Zach actually doing the killing. It's a heavy burden to be playing this type of character. He just worked, he's not this kind of method actor who needs to 24/7 be the character, but he certainly did a lot.
There's the man there.
Yeah, right. I guess the star is here.
Yeah.
So he worked very hard. He worked very hard.
What was he like to work with? Because there's so much expectation. Zac Efron, is this, is that? What's he like?
Oh, he's so fun. He's so lovely. He's kind to everyone. He's a goofball half the time. And I don't know, we just had such a great time. I think this was an interesting movie for both of us. It's him in a way that you've never seen him before. I'm definitely playing a role that I haven't played. And I think it was interesting because we both aren't supposed to know what each other is thinking, right? Because there's so much lying going on. So, sorry, everybody wants the man.
They want you to know.
Zach. So it was really interesting to kind of work together in this capacity because there's different stories happening within the one story. But he's wonderful, he's lovely, and I'm really proud of what he did in this and excited for people to see.
For you as well, what an incredible role.
Thank you.
It's a story through her eyes, and it's not that often that somebody's still alive to share their story. That's the bit that really fascinated me. So you had, I guess, a bit of a responsibility.
I did. I wanted to pay tribute to Elizabeth, having spent time with her, but also she very much felt like it was freeing to me. Like, it's your role, you do it. So I was very grateful for her help. I actually met Elizabeth and her daughter Molly, and she was so giving of her time, and She told me so much and showed me images of them growing up. So I felt like I had an inside look, but there were also some things that she told me that I felt were just for me to know. And so I was toying with that line of just being an actress, portraying a role that not many people knew about, but also paying homage to the woman and what she had told me. So it was a gift to be able to communicate with her, though. I had a lot of found footage to look at. I spoke to the real Liz and her daughter Molly and asked lots of questions, and she was so giving of her time. And I think it's important. It's one of the reasons I signed on, because we don't ever really get to see the perspective of the victim. And in the way that we tell it, it's not direct POV, because there are scenes that I'm not witness to, but it's the idea that by the end of it, hopefully the audience feels what Liz is feeling in those moments when what happens to Bundy, because she was duped for so long, that we hope the audiences can kind of suspend disbelief for the amount of the movie, so that when she feels her emotions at the end, the audience is with her.
Describe the transformation you underwent to play the character of Bundy.
Thanks, man. Transformation. I got to lose some weight, eat plant-based, so I lost like, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds. I don't know that in stone. So is 12 pounds 1 stone?
I think so, yeah. My math is not so good.
But I mean, aside from the weight, Zach, can you talk a little bit about what makes this man so fascinating and why it was important for you as a storyteller to tackle a role like this at this point in your career?
Good question. So that's a couple questions. So first, I've always part of why I do this and what I enjoy about it most is trying new things and diversification and pushing myself to see what I'm capable of. I love acting. I'm learning the craft more and more, and saying no to movies that aren't about acting. So I'm getting into filmmaking more and more, and this was a very unique take on a telling of a serial killer story, one that I felt was centered around the psyche and not so much. We barely show any violence in the movie, but centered on the psyche of what it was like to be there in that moment, and Liz, what it was like to be with him through her eyes, how that must have been. Ted was able to get away with murder, literally, and is one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, and somehow my generation and maybe the generation after us, if they don't know who he is, I feel like this is a way into an incredible story that teaches a lesson and is not what you're expecting. I really enjoy that it looks like a desperate attempt for like that move that guys do to like get into an action movie or become a killer or become dark, but Ted Bundy was the most liked guy in the world at some of the moments in his trial. Even though he was a terrible person and he changed the world. You could argue that the day his trial started with the camera filming his trial and he was defending himself was the day that really changed the landscape of true crime. It's not a movie about violence or really actually even, we don't show much killing. It's not even actually about that, I would say. It's about a man and a woman in a relationship. And it puts you in the shoes of some, yeah, it's disarming, but it puts you in the shoes of somebody who was there at that time. It could be the person closest to you that is the most evil person in the world, and you have no idea. So pay attention to the people around you, because you never know. The sweetest people in the world could be the most malicious. Look at you guys, you all look very sweet.